Stacy. Welcome.
Tabani, thank you.
How are you?
I am.
How are things?
There we go.
How are things?
Things are moving forward in a positive direction.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What's moving forward in a positive direction?
I might as well just get straight into the thing that I love.
Okay.
You want to hear about it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Definitely. That's why you're here.
That's why I'm here. Well, I love lots of things. The thing that is occupying a lot of my time at the moment, and that is moving us forward, I would say, is a podcast that I run with a colleague of mine, Sena.
Yeah.
And we speak about race and privilege in our country.
I was listening to it.
Yeah, I know you were.
Yeah.
And it's a really exciting space to be in because we are encouraging people to join a conversation that should have been more active for a long time. And we're finding some very interesting feedback.
Yeah.
There are people who are like, why would you go there?
Yeah.
And there are other people that say, why has it taken us so long?
Yeah.
Other people who are afraid to comment.
True.
So it's been a really interesting space.
It tends to be a scary platform or space to get into.
Podcasting or race?
No, race.
Race,
Yeah, because it's like a touchy subject.
Yeah.
And you, like you say, some people are scared to comment because I'm fearful I might just say the wrong thing and people are going to comment and I'm going to cancel it.
It's actually, it depends on the side that you're talking to, right?
100%.
So if you're talking to white South Africans,
Yeah.
typically they're either apathetic and not interested in engaging, or they tend to not necessarily have the language they need to speak up in those spaces. And so the logical response is to withdraw. And maybe that is what looks like apathy, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But then amongst black people, it's not always as safe to speak about race and to speak about how that may have influenced where they've gotten in life or not gotten in life, what opportunities they have or couldn't have had. And so it's a balancing act between both, encouraging black people into the space, encouraging white people into the space, and acknowledging that we're both coming at it from different places.
Interesting. And we'll talk about it more because I know it's something that you're really passionate about.
Yeah.
So welcome to the CMO Corner.
Thank you.
I hope you're going to have fun.
Me too.
I hope you're going to have honest conversations, one about marketing, one about consumers, and what brands and executives or marketing executives can actually do to step change what marketing currently looks like. So that's why I brought you here, because I also know you're very vocal. You don't like shy away from the thing you want to say.
Give her a microphone.
So that's why you're here. Before we get to all the nitty-gritty stuff, who is Stacy outside of the title at Kantar?
She's a mom to 2 kiddies, 8 and 7.
Lovely.
Yeah. Then what else? She doesn't like to cook.
Yeah.
So Woolworths is probably one of her closest friends. As a 60-60, they compete. Oh my goodness. I do enjoy dancing, but nobody's allowed to watch. Okay. That's it. That's all I've got.
Yeah.
That's who she is.
And what makes Stacy tick?
Just anything that I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
I will go at it wholeheartedly, fully. Do you know what it actually is? It's connecting with people. I think that there's so much richness in connecting with people. I love meeting people, hearing people's experiences, hearing the perspectives on topics that I don't know enough about, maybe topics that I know a lot about. People.
Love that. And when did your journey, maybe let's start with your journey in your career, where it started, and maybe fast track to where you are currently today.
Okay.
As the commercial growth director at Kantar.
At Kantar, yeah.
100%.
So I studied at Rhodes University.
Yeah.
Too long ago. And then...
Did you say too long ago?
I said too long ago, I did.
Yeah.
So I studied there, and then I actually started on with Liberty Life on their graduate recruitment program that was in Johannesburg. And then I moved to Durban for a touch and worked at Unilever. That was like 3 years in consumer market insight.
Gotcha.
And then I moved from there to Philip Morris, so out of Durban to Cape Town, where I now still currently live, with Philip Morris, tobacco manufacturers, also in sort of market and consumer insight. And then I decided that I was going to start a gym. So, do you remember when CrossFit...
I saw that,
do you remember when CrossFit was a thing?
Yeah.
Okay, I did the CrossFit. So
what do you mean I did the CrossFit?
I competed. I did all the things. I was like double my size. That was all muscle.
Is it?
Yeah. And I became a CrossFit certified coach, and then opened a box in Cape Town, Did that for 3 years. See, it's very seasonal, hey?
Yeah.
And there's zero money in it.
You decided, that's what you decided.
Yeah. I was like, no. Like, I gotta eat. So I left that and joined Kantar on the research side before I joined the commercial side. And and then figured out that I just love people so very much. And suddenly that seemed to be an opening in Kantar. It was like, well, let's connect with our clients by really understanding what their needs are. And so I was like, oh, you're telling me I get to speak to lots of people.
There we go.
And they're like, yeah, that's what you do. And that's where I still am, and I love it.
So what does your role actually entail for someone who doesn't know? I work with Kantar a lot.
Yeah, you do.
So I know, but it's always important for other people to know what Kantar actually really does and how the different divisions are split, etc.
Yeah, okay. So what I do in Kantar, I'll come to, but what Kantar is itself, so Kantar is the largest consumer research agency globally, also in South Africa. We specialize in brand tracking. We really understand what makes brands grow in our country.
Yeah. We
run a study called Brand Z. South Africa is one of the markets. We're quite lucky to be one of the markets because it's a big investment, and we have been building this database of how to grow brands in South Africa through Brand Z over many years.
Gotcha.
And so that's sort of the biggest portion of our business. But understanding consumers across South Africa as a whole is what we do.
Yeah.
So we do that through customer experience. We do that through media and creative testing, through innovation and product testing, and then, as I said, through brand.
Got you. And your role?
My role is to meet with clients to understand what the need is, what kind of question they're trying to solve, what the business objective is, and then to design the right research that's going to meet their needs.
Hectic. So consumers then seem to be at the heart of everything that you do.
Me personally, or me as a company?
No, you
I think
personally.
It's
both. You personally.
Yeah.
And for me, one of the most important things I want us to tackle today, one is Mzansi Barometer.
Okay.
Because I think it is a very insightful document. But insights are useless when you don't know what to do with them. And what I find is, what happens is, we tend to want the insights as organizations. We want the insights, what the consumer is doing, but we don't know what to do with it after.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. What I also hope that we're going to touch on is elements that drive brand growth, which is important. And lastly, what we can do with the insights that we currently find in the document. Whether that is Brand Z, whether that is Zanzibar Barometer. And then I want to close off with things that are close to your heart, which is diversity, equality, inclusion.
Sounds amazing.
Okay, let's kickstart with the document. So, can people find the document? Where can they find the document that we're going to be talking about?
They need to speak to me.
Okay, cool.
And anybody can speak to me.
Okay,
literally anybody. Email me, find me on LinkedIn.
Okay, cool.
I will send you the document.
Super. So what I'll do is I'll put your details in the description.
That's awesome.
Super. So let's get a sense of where South Africans are. And I say this because I want to discuss this document. Corporates need it, marketers need it, influencers need it, key decision makers in organizations need it. I like to think everyone needs it. So where's South Africa currently?
I mean, the other crowd that also need it is even entrepreneurs.
Definitely.
It's anybody who needs to understand how consumers in South Africa, which is all of us, but how consumers behave. And that's just so relevant across every industry, as you say, and across every profession. In terms of where South Africa stands at the moment, we are fundamentally worried about quite a few things. Yeah. Corruption in government, crime and violence, load shedding, which is actually now obviously
it's been quiet.
It's been very quiet.
Okay.
Don't say it too loud. The cost of living is obviously huge as well. So these are the big topics that is occupying South Africans' minds at the moment.
Yeah.
And whatever we do as brands or entrepreneurs or all those other sort of professions that you listed, whatever we do needs to take into account that this is the reality we are living with. But what I love about it is how those are the circumstances, and yet consumers we are built here to make plans to not compromise our lifestyle despite our circumstances. And that's where the mindset of South Africans are at, is how do I unlock the lifestyle that I want with what I have? And that's variable, right? It changes year on year, and it changes according to the macro and microeconomics and circumstances at the time.
So what are the key things? So you mentioned cost of living, you mentioned load shedding, which has been quiet. What is the impact that these things currently have, one, for brands and possibly, I mean, consumers can relate, right? Because we live with the issues.
Yeah.
But what does it mean for brands? So I'm a brand manager for Tabaliko. And I think, okay, there's cost of living, so inflation is going high. There is load shedding. the price of food obviously is going high. How does that impact me and my brand as the entrepreneur? Maybe let's start there.
Yeah, you gotta understand how South Africans are making decisions.
Gotcha.
So because that is their reality, they are trading off certain things that are luxuries. And remember, what is a luxury to you is different to what is luxury to me. It's a relative term.
Yeah.
So they are trading off luxuries to be able to access what they need to survive.
Gotcha.
And we need to understand how we fit into that without shouting louder to try and get attention of a wallet that is not available. And so practically it's about understanding how consumers make decisions to access that lifestyle. And maybe it's a case of, let me give you an example, okay?
Yeah.
So I don't know what Tabani Co does.
Yeah.
Okay. But let's say that they manufacture sauces.
Gotcha.
Right? So maybe they specialize in tomato sauce.
Yes.
And in the past, you may have thought, as Tabani Co tomato sauce manufacturers, that you are only competing with other brands that sit in tomato sauce.
100%.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's how you buy all of your consumer insight data.
Yes.
That's how you make decisions.
That's what I read, even with the data.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
But now, what's happening is South Africans are so stretched that they're looking at how they can find benefit in categories that they are almost redefining.
Okay.
So I'm now a consumer who's looking for a sauce. I'm not necessarily looking for tomato sauce, I'm looking for sauces. But I'm looking for the sauce that can do the most jobs.
Okay.
Because I can only buy one sauce now. I can't buy mayo and tomato sauce, I can buy one. So which one of those can do the most job? And typically you might, in that case, pick mayonnaise, because mayonnaise can be used on your salads and your burgers and your chips, whereas tomato sauce is just chips and burgers. So they are redefining categories based on where they can find the most value.
Jeez, that's tricky because that changes the way in which I then view my competitor landscape.
Absolutely.
Because now I have to think broader than just the tomato sauce.
Yeah, and in the past, brands would refer to that as adjacent categories.
Great.
But consumers might actually be seeing them as true competitors entering your consideration set.
Yeah.
It changes the way we look at equity and the way people make decisions.
Okay, so consumers are feeling the pressure.
Sure.
The pockets or the wallets are stretched.
Mm-hmm.
And what you mentioned is I then buy one thing and I hope to stretch it as much as possible. And then what do I then consume in the space? Because media is what we do, right? Or that's the platform we use, rather.
Mm-hmm.
So we use media to try and communicate to our consumers.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's social media, whether it's TV, whether it's TV on demand, whatever it might be. What are they consuming now?
The consumers?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, it's obviously going to come as no surprise that we love being on our socials.
Yeah.
But what is surprising to me is how much we love being on our socials. So if you look at the different media channels, the sort of net increase. So that's if you take away all the people that are saying I'm doing this a lot more and minus out the people who are saying I'm doing this less.
Okay.
You get a massive net increase in the consumption of most media channels. Bar, TV, radio, magazine, and newspapers. Everything else is growing.
Gotcha.
And the summary headline there is we are just consuming so much, more and more and more. It's not like penetration is growing of those platforms. That's long gone.
Yeah.
It is frequency.
Okay.
So, and in terms of what those are, so the two biggest, well, let's say the three biggest. The three biggest ones are Google searching.
Okay.
It is email, and by the way,
Email,
can you believe? And that is still number two. Whether you look at this data amongst higher income or lower income homes, email is still number two in that list.
And in your report, I'm not sure if you know, and if you don't have this information, it's fine. Do you know that if people actually open the email? Because what I know, I've got a lot of ads. Like if I was to go to my inbox, I've got tons of ads.
Yeah.
But I don't open them.
Look, I don't have this in the report,
Okay,
but
cool.
I have a viewpoint.
That's fine. Okay.
Is that
I'd love to hear your viewpoint.
a lot of mailboxes like to very kindly sift out what we don't need to see.
Got you.
And so people are being forced to focus on what's necessary. I really don't see, I've seen a lot of email marketing material and I've had brands ask about it. Yeah. And my advice is do not go there. It's not a platform that people want to be spoken to by brands. They're in their email for a reason.
Yeah.
They're not there to be spoken to by brands.
So even though it forms part of top 2, if I understand you correctly.
Even so. And it's an interesting question because I actually had 2 weeks ago I had someone phone and say, should we start an email campaign? And no, for the same reason that you don't want to be on YouTube. In fact, this is something that happened to me the other day. I was on YouTube. I was jamming. Yeah. I was having like a pretty cute time on my own because nobody watches me dance. So I was doing my thing, and then Gillette thought it was a really great time to interrupt my session with an ad for shaving cream.
Poor Gillette.
Poor Gillette. So sorry guys, it could have been anyone, but it happened to have been Gillette for shaving cream. I was like, now I'm just pissed off. having a good time and you interrupted me. I'm not saying people are having a great time in their emails. In fact, it's probably the exact opposite. They're having the worst time in their emails. They're not open to being chatted to by brands. They're not open to engaging with your content. However, speak to them. This is something that LinkedIn does really well.
Yeah.
If you go into LinkedIn, you go there for a reason. And somehow LinkedIn's algorithm is so clever that when it talks about products that are of relevance to you, it knows what you're doing and then shares that content with you. So you might be looking at accounting packages or whatever, and suddenly there's an ad for SAP business software.
True.
So and the way they present it to you is more as content rather than a brand shouting at you.
Yeah.
So you logically want to find out what they have to offer because it is relevant to the mind space that you're in.
Got you.
And maybe that's the point.
Got you.
Is content that is relevant for the moment.
And are you finding that the findings or the insights are across different industries and categories? So as much as we used Tabaneko, I even forgot the name of my business. The tomato sauce business.
Tomato sauce business.
Do you find that that's across tomato sauce, banking, apps, or whatever it might be?
Yeah, it's happening across everything. Another example, okay, it's not services, it's FMCG, but we find the same with like cleaning products.
Yeah.
So people buy one product instead of buying 3 different products because it can do multiple jobs, so yes. And even with services and banking, should I rather say the ancillary products around banking, the lifestyle products.
Yeah.
If you can pick out one policy that can do multiple things, why would you not do that?
True.
It just makes more sense because then you can call on it when you are experiencing different troubles within life because you never know what the issue is going to be.
Yeah.
We're talking about an insurance product.
Got
so
you.
one product that can do multiple things makes so much more sense.
And in the space of the one thing we're fighting for is this consumer that's now bombarded with so many things in the media. There has to be some form of formula or science, at least to some degree, of brand growth, I'd like to think. And I've been exposed to some things at Kantar, which I'm not sure if you want to speak about, that actually drive brand growth, because that's also just as important. We're trying to drive brand growth. That's what we're there to do as marketers.
Yeah. So the model you're referring to, let's touch on it for a moment because it is relevant. So the model is the meaningfully different framework. It's our Kantar IP tool for brand growth. It's also the tool we use for Brand Z to analyze how to grow brands. And it uses 3 metrics, and it says, and these 3 metrics differ by category. But if you're able to get to the heart of those 3 metrics, you will grow because if you answer those, which I will get to in a moment, but once you answer those objectives, you create what we refer to as predisposition. Yeah. You create a demand for your brand so that when people go into whatever the marketplace is, they are already predisposed to wanting you, and so you've done half the job. Now they can choose you. So the metrics are meaning, difference, and salience. So salience, sometimes people confuse the idea of salience with awareness.
Okay.
You know, a lot of brands are hyper-focused on whether or not people are aware of them.
Yes.
Quite honestly, I can be aware of many, many, many brands and have no intention of ever engaging with them. And I use the example quite often to say, I used to run a little bit more than I do now because now I'm kind of busy. But this was a true example. It was about a year ago when I was looking for running shoes. Yeah. And for example, I know that Macro make running shoes. Yeah. So I'm aware of it. Am I ever going to purchase Macro running shoes? No.
Possibly not. Yeah.
So tracking awareness if you're Macro.
Sorry, Macro.
No, geez.
What if Macro's my sponsor?
No, I like Macro for other things.
I'm kidding.
So the point is, salience is different to awareness in the sense that salience is how often can a brand come to mind as the answer to your need. Okay. Not just are you aware of it, are you aware of it and is it top of mind?
Got you.
Then we have meaning, which is the stuff that every marketer knows about. That's that emotional connection we create with consumers, and it is using both functional and emotional levers to draw us closer to our consumers. Are we meeting their needs? And needs are subjective. Yeah. And then the most important one, especially when we're talking about times of economic pressure and tight purses and all of that kind of thing, is difference. Difference is the extent to which you are seen as offering something different from competitors in the market. And that can be a perceived point of difference. But if you are able to do that, then you can justify to a consumer can justify to themselves why they chose you. Yeah. If they can't justify that, then they could pick anyone in that state. Okay. So we know through Brand Z that consumers are willing to pay up to 16% more for a brand that they see as meaningfully different to them. Now, this is even in this current economy that I've just described that is so incredibly tight. Those same consumers who are so tight are willing to pay more for brands that are meaningfully different.
Jeez.
And so this is what our job is as brands. If we want to grow, we need to be meaningfully different. We need to be salient. in the right percentages, and we can tell you what those are.
I was about to say, that's my next question. Like, what is the split? Because I can't do all of these at the same time. I have to prioritize to some degree.
Yeah, you absolutely do. So every category has a different weighting of those three metrics in what drives demand.
Yeah.
And when we track your brand for you, we set those weights according to what we do the research amongst the category to set the weights, and then we test your ability as a brand to meet each of those metrics versus your competitors. And then knowing that, we then tell you where you need to focus.
Okay.
You can't do everything.
Yeah, let's use our tomato example.
Yeah, tomato sauce.
The tomato sauce example. So I would assume that's an FMCG. I'm assuming as well, because you've got so much clutter in that shelf, difference again comes up tops.
Huge. It's huge. So, I know you want to talk about tomato sauce, but can I give you a different example?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good. A colleague of mine was telling me about, she went shopping with her husband, 2 weeks ago. And they were walking through the store, and she was just saying that she was pretty excited because she had just received, Woolworths give those vouchers through the app or whatever. So she was quite excited because she had received a beauty voucher, 100 Rand off her next beauty purchase. And then in the same breath, she said to him, "Oh, just wait here, I'm going to Bobby Brown to buy my lipstick." And he said to her, "But why would you go there where it's so super expensive?
Yeah.
And you just told me that you can get a lipstick from Woolworths, which by the way is amazing quality. So why would you not do that?"
Yeah.
And her answer was, "Yes, but."
Okay.
If you are able, as a brand, to be to figure out what the but is, you are meaningfully different.
I get you.
Because your consumer can justify why they are going to put extra money behind purchasing you when they have a broad selection of brands that may be cheaper.
Okay. That's interesting. Now, in that example, you mentioned, and for me, it's been one of the things I keep asking myself. So you'd argue that a lot of consumers, because the wallet is strapped, or we're all cash strapped, even the people that you think have money actually are also cash strapped.
Yes.
My question has always been, you see a rise in all these loyalty programs. And now, is it fair to assume that the lower end of the spectrum, possibly, are the ones that are using these loyalty cards and they want more of them because they're trying to find bargains and deals, etc. And the wealthy of the wealthy actually are not interested? Or are they using them as well? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a great question. I want to challenge one point though first. Okay. Do you really think that those are loyalty programs? Like, are they driving loyalty to those brands, those retail brands?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because we all have tons of them.
Yeah.
So obviously, I'm not loyal to any.
Exactly.
I use it when it just works for me.
And it works for you when you can get the cheapest price. 100%. So those programs are enabling a price-based shopping culture, but they're not driving loyalty to any one brand over another.
Yeah.
If you are cheaper this week, then I'll go to you to buy the fabric softener or whatever, but if you are cheaper this week, I'll go there to buy the fabric softener. So it's not driving loyalty, it's driving price. And that is a behavior that is entirely engaged in amongst both lower and higher income households. So your loyalty program needs to understand that consumers don't consume your product in isolation of every other product that they are consuming. So how do you fit into her lifestyle? And there are so many great examples of how you can do that.
Yeah. Give me a couple.
Okay. So I had a great chat actually with a brand earlier today. Have you heard of the Moya app?
Yes.
The Moya app, right? Okay, so it's zero rates. It's a zero rated. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's a zero rated platform. It's almost like a concierge. So you have so many things within this app. You can pay for your electricity, so you can buy electricity, you can see where your closest spot is for your SASA grants, you can understand the load shedding schedule, you can buy funeral cover, you can buy data, you can do so many things within this app, and it's zero rated. At last count they had, or when I last checked, they have 6 million active subscribers. Now, why would you as a brand choose to create your very own loyalty program to buy data or to buy fresh produce or whatever it is that you as a brand do? Why would you choose to do that? Because all of the marketing and all of the brand equity building and all of that sits with you, rather than access the Moya app where people already have built that into their lifestyle. Just be there so that when they go and buy their whatever, they can do you at the same time.
Got you.
So it's about understanding that your brand exists within the lifestyle of a person, and how do we fit into the lifestyle rather than creating greater friction for that person.
Yeah.
She is so over having 5,000 cards. Like, to be able to do it in one place is going to make your brand stand out for her.
And in your report, you talk about friction now. I'm looking at my notes here. There's a concept around friction-free and value-filled concept. What is that? What's the difference between the two?
Oh, okay. I live in Cape Town.
Yeah.
Okay. I had to catch my flight to get there on time. To do that, I needed to leave the house.
Yeah.
To do that, I needed to make sure my son put his shoes on.
Yeah.
Do you know what that was like for me?
No,
it was so hard. Do you have a 7-year-old?
No, I don't.
Okay, I have a 7-year-old. Yeah. I have tried for 7 years to get him to put his shoes on.
Yeah.
I left the house late and frustrated and irritated.
Yeah.
If there were an app that could make that friction-free for me, I would be a happier person.
Got you.
But we feel this in everything that we do.
Yeah.
Our mental capacity is like so stretched that if I need to jump through hoops to access your loyalty program, I'm not going to do it. I'm looking for value. I'm looking for you to fit into my lifestyle. But I'm looking for you to simplify the process for me. And that's what that is all about. It's about how do we as brands simplify the mental load that is sitting with our consumers, and how do we create greater value for them by understanding where your brand is fitting into their lifestyle.
Jeez, okay. So, with everything that the report comes with, how do people take the insights that are there and almost like translate them into practical things they can do? I guess my question is like, what now? So we've got elements of the loyalty that we've discussed, we've got elements of the stuff that comes from Brand Z and how to grow brands, we've got the stuff that talks about we are all cash strapped and we're trying to figure our lives and the mood of the nation is not great. We've spoken about possibly the decline of most categories. What now? Like, it's all great information, but it feels all doom and gloom.
There's one part that we've left out, which is that South Africans are eternally optimistic. And we know this. So 54% of the people 54% of the people that we spoke to said that despite all of this macroeconomic circumstances and all of this, that they are positive that they are going to have, that they have a positive trajectory for their household financial position, that in a year from now they will be in a better position than they are. Whether or not that comes to fruition doesn't matter. The point is that South Africans will find a way to make things stretch. I say South Africans, maybe it's all humans, I don't know.
Possibly.
But they will find a way to make it work. And what brands need to do is do it first, because consumers are already doing it. So if you, here's an example. You know Foodies are their sales.
Yes.
Okay. They have this whole, what do we call it, a campaign, a series, whatever it is, about taking some sort of super humble ingredient from the cupboard and making an Instagram-worthy meal out of it.
Yes.
And one of the examples that comes into my mind is pilchards.
Yeah.
Pilchards, right?
I hate them.
Do you?
It's like my poverty meal. It's like trauma for me.
So
I had it
and
so
that's the
much.
point. I know, and that's the point. Okay, but now, so if you had a whole bunch of guests over tonight, are you going to be putting pilchards on the table? No.
But
right? Exactly. So Foodies made it look amazing. They
True.
took this thing, they gave you the recipe, and they showed us how it looks.
True.
Honestly, I want to be invited to that dinner party.
True.
So consumers will come up with the plan first. They will. And what brands need to do is get there faster, because they have the resources. They have all the greatest minds. They need to take all of this and figure out what it feels like to be a consumer, and then show up. Okay. And you can do that in any category. You just need to take a step back from all the paperwork and all the emails, and go and speak to your consumers, because they've already come up with the solutions.
Before we kind of close off on that discussion, you mentioned something about South Africans being optimistic. How do they, or rather, what is the lay of the land currently in terms of supplementing their income? Because I think that's important.
Yeah.
If I've got 50 Rand, I'm trying to stretch my 50 Rand, there has to be another way in which I'm fighting for either additional income or maybe trying to spend it more optimally, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, it's a cool one. So we started in 2023. It was the first time we added to the barometer this question around the hustle. What does it look like? Because I know there's a general understanding in our country that there's a lot of hustle, but like, what is it and how big is it and all that kind of thing. So we started it last year. The results look quite similar last year to this year. And essentially what we found was, let me just get my numbers right here. It was about a third, just over a third of South Africans are not actively engaged in some kind of hustle, but they're thinking it through. Okay. So they're on YouTube, they're learning a new skill that they can then commercialize. They're doing something. They're actively involved in trying to find a hustle that is going to support their household income. Then you've got 22% of people who have already started a business that has become their primary income, another 20% that have recently started a business, and 9% who have taken on a second job. When you do all the maths, that leaves only 9% of our country, of our connected country, that is not actively engaged with trying to figure out how to create additional income into the home. And what that means for brands is that they need to understand that as South Africans, we are constantly, like, we are creative, we are looking for solutions, we are making plans, we're needing data, we need access, we need resources, because we are surveying our landscape and saying, what do I have access to and how do I commercialize that? And that's the mind frame that we are in. So, which is why we come up with solutions so quickly when we are faced with challenges. And that's what I think the challenge to brands are. Do it quicker.
Do you think brands have a role in solving that problem? And I'll give you an example. So if now the hustle economy is a thing, and I'll give some examples, what you see is a couple of brands, possibly a couple of banking guys, they'll create some initiative of some sorts. And I'm not sure if it's authentic or it's jumping on the bandwagon of, actually, this thing seems to be booming up, so hey, we're going to jump into it. But do you think brands actually have a role in solving those problems? Because in other rooms, when the insight, because that's an insight, right? It's a data point that says, actually, unemployment is high, it's rising, people are trying to find side hustles. As a brand, should we be going into that direction or not? And I've heard, I won't mention names, but in some boardrooms we say no. It's not the brand's job to solve an economic problem. So we're not going to play in that lane. Is it a fair space for brands to be going into or not? Your personal opinion.
Yeah, I think, so we have a sustainability kind of practice at Kantar. I'm taking a wide definition of sustainability. I'm talking about social and environmental and things. And one of the things that we found there is, and I can't remember the exact statistic right now, but it was over 50% of South Africans believe that solutions need to come from big business, from corporates. They put less responsibility on government and more responsibility on big business in South Africa. And they do that because big business have in the past shown up. I attended what is it called? A CEO like a round table. And in there was some of the biggest brands in our country. They had their CEOs and their CMOs in that room. And they didn't once speak about marketing and brands. They spoke about the country and who's doing what. It was the most enlightening experience I've been on. Honestly, I left with goosebumps because I just thought these are people who really, really care and who are using the resources and the resources and the sheer impact that they can have in this country and doing something with it. So to answer your question, I do believe that they have to do that. We are a country that is desperately unequal. We have the majority of our population who haven't had access to resources for all their lives. And then you've got a whole bunch of brands that are making a lot of money. And I know I'm oversimplifying what brands have to do and who they have to deal with and who they have to report to, but I think that there's a responsibility to solve some of these problems.
And you think, because I'm assuming, yes, there might be the responsibility, but it's also hard to then quantify it in a room. Kantar gives us nice ideas. I work with Kantar, I've been working with Kantar. So you get all the brilliant ideas. When it's time to take it into the boardroom, and mind you, the MD possibly was there as well in the session.
Right.
When it's time to execute the idea, damn, the resistance is...
The resistance is huge. But you know what it is? I find it's because one brand is trying to tackle one whole problem all by themselves. You can't do that. You will come up against 100 different barriers. But if 3 powerful brands are willing to tackle that same problem together, can you imagine how they would unlock doors? Think about the networks and the resources and the everything else that you would be able to access if you just make the circle bigger.
True. Okay. Challenge accepted.
Cool. So Tabani Code. Yeah.
We'll see how that goes. Cool. So now let's talk about something, and I think we've like zoned in on the report quite a bit. So thank you. I want to talk about the credibility of the report, because people always tend to ask, okay, so yeah, there's these insights, but like, are they a real thing? How big is it? Can we use what we found in the document? Like, how big is the scale of the report, and how in depth do you go?
So the study itself, every year we speak to 500 connected South Africans. When I say connected, I mean people who have accessed the internet in the past 7 days. So it is representative of around about 60% of our country. So it's going to, and they're generally based in the metro areas. So it's going to exclude people in rural areas and people who don't use the internet. So that's the first point. And then I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, 500, that doesn't sound like a very big number." It's pretty good. It's pretty robust. We have we've designed the sample framework to be representative using the right quotas of South Africans.
Yeah.
So there's no reason why you wouldn't trust the data. And we work within the right confidence intervals and all of that. So it's certainly trustworthy. Look, it's a great starting point. Because I'll tell you that every single brand that Kantar speaks to commissions research for their category or their brand.
Yeah.
Never are they able to have the budgets to step back and say what's happening at a national level.
Yes.
So without access to that, this is a pretty good place to start. And I think questioning the insights is probably not the right way to go. What I would suggest is, why don't you think about that then and commission some research to understand that better if it is of relevance to your brand.
Okay. Lovely. Cool. So as we try and wind down in the last 15 minutes or so, one of the things you speak mostly about, so we've spoken a lot about you and your current role at Kantar, but you also have Colourful, the podcast.
Yes.
I was listening to it, and I want to know why you started it. What's the why behind you starting it?
Oh my goodness, I was asked this yesterday in an interview. I was interviewing.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to tell you.
Yeah, tell me.
We interviewed Jason Goliath yesterday.
I love
comedian,
him.
love him. And he said to me,
fun.
I know, it was so fun. It was so fabulous. And we got to the end of the interview where Sena and I interviewed him.
Yeah.
And we were sort of wrapping it up, and he said, I'm not ready to wrap up. I need to understand why you, who presents as a white woman, is so engaged in this topic.
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Why.
Yeah, 100%.
And the reason is, I'm not proud.
And you live in Cape Town, my friend.
And I live in Cape Town with all the other
like,
white people. I'm not really proud of my whiteness.
Okay.
And I think that white people have a big responsibility in this country, and I think we have stayed away from looking at that responsibility. And I just feel very passionately about opening up this conversation, bringing it into white spaces. This conversation has existed in black spaces, or should I say spaces of color, for all the years, because obviously our history.
Yeah.
Yet it doesn't exist, unfortunately, enough in white spaces. I have access to those spaces, and I am determined to get people to engage in this conversation. And so my why is that I just don't think we have done any justice in our country, and it's not good enough.
Jeez. You start by saying, I'm not proud.
No.
That's deep.
And you know, it's actually, it's kind of rubbish, because every time we've interviewed someone on the podcast, we've interviewed people of different colors, and most of the time people will say, I am proud of my whatever color they may be. And every time I walk away from that interview, I just think, and I am so unproud of it. So, but you know what? That's the smallest price I have to pay. Shame. I've had like all this generational privilege for so long. So if that's the worst I have to deal with, well, then that's fine. And at least we can use it to start conversations.
And what type of conversation do you have there?
Where? On the podcast? On the podcast. Okay. So we talk about issues that relate to race and privilege. So some of the topics that we've dealt with, well, actually the very first episode we had was called Why Would I Listen to a White Woman Talk About Race? And it was an ashamed confession by this white woman about the fact that it took her so long to have this conversation, which poses as a challenge for other white people. And then we talk about, in fact, our episode that we just released today was called What is Racism? Because you would be amazed at how little people understand even the definition of racism, which gives rise to that fantasy of reverse racism, right? So we deal with the issue of what is racism. We've got another one coming out quite soon, which is, it's an introduction to white privilege and calling out the many facets of white privilege, calling out biases. Yeah, those are the kinds of topics. Now listen, they sound really heavy, but I must tell you, it sounds really heavy, but I must tell you that my co-host, Sena, and I, we vibe.
In the back,
she is in the back. So we vibe so hard that we make that podcast fun. So there are heavy issues, but they're conversational. We intentionally make them very conversational and not light-hearted, because we're not making light of a very strong and heavy topic. But we're giving it the gravitas it deserves, but we're doing it in a way that enable people to develop the right language to have conversations across race. And it's fun, it's engaging.
That's powerful. And what changed?
And we get cool guests, like comedians.
You talk to comedians about the stuff which is serious, but there's humor in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think changes the narrative, which is brilliant. So what does the future hold for the podcast? What are you trying to achieve? Yeah, it's a discussion, I get it, but long term.
We want this to be a national dialogue.
Yeah.
In the past, any black person who calls this out, I'm overgeneralizing here,
Yeah,
but very
yeah,
often if
sure.
a black person wants to call out issues of race and privilege, they are referred to as being aggressive or overly emotional or calling out things that don't exist, or you're making up stories that don't exist and all of this kind of stuff. It's to give validity to the argument that black people have been having for a very long time, that white people have been totally deaf to. And it is about bringing this conversation, one of my intentions is to bring this conversation into white spaces. But having said that, this podcast is not meant to be an education platform for white people. Frankly, we invented racism, so we need to know what it is. So it's not about that, but it's about equipping people who choose to engage in this conversation with the right language so that they can show up in a sensitive way and stop saying yes but. Yes but Oprah made it, so why can't blah 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 make it? Or yes but, like, enough of that now. Like, can we actually just take responsibility for what we've created?
Damn. Okay. So in the spectrum of like talking about diversity, inclusion, equity, equality, because all of these things are different, and I know you're quite passionate about them. What's the impact that you want to make outside now of the podcast? If you talk to Stacy as an individual and say, actually, this is the impact I hope to see, whether it's in my work, whether it is in, the podcast is work, but it's fun work, it's passion work. Yeah. What do you see for yourself? What's that impact like?
I need to make sure that this conversation is happening amongst the people that I know and in the circles that I have access to. Because as soon as those conversations are happening in those circles, then those people can take the conversation out. So it is about influencing where I am able to influence. And obviously Sena and I were using the podcast to do that, but we're also using every single engagement that we have to show up in a way that acknowledges both race and privilege. And so that spans both my professional career at Kantar, but then also every social engagement that I go to as Stacy, or as Kantar, or as Colourful, or as a mom.
And how do you juggle all these things?
I don't know, how do you do it?
Can you give me some tips? I would love to know how you juggle all of it, because you seem very busy.
Oh, everybody's busy, right? But if you're passionate enough about what you're doing, then you are just motivated to do it. I can't imagine my life without that podcast. And it is busy. It is, but it's moving in a direction. Like we've had the most incredibly emotional encounters with people that just tell me that we're doing the right thing. So I could never stop.
Continue doing it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a beautiful podcast. I've listened to it. I want to watch it.
You can. On YouTube. Can I? Yeah, you can watch it on YouTube.
Okay. I was listening to Spotify.
So you can watch it on YouTube, or you can listen to it on Spotify, or you can listen to it on Apple Podcast.
Okay, see.
But by the way, it is color-full. So don't try and make it all one word. We made life difficult for ourselves by splitting out the name and putting a hyphen in it. I think if we could just change that up. But anyway, too late.
Okay, cool.
That's
you must watch it, definitely.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming. I think it's possibly the right time to end. I'm looking at the time. I'm very conscious of people's time when they give me time. It's almost past. I'll put you on the spot in saying, so the CMO corner, we ask marketing executives like yourself, whether it is clients, agency, etc., to come to the podcast. We have done, this is the official final recording for the year.
Okay.
I might squeeze in another one. I'm a sucker for pain. I would want you to nominate a marketing executive you think should come here. And mind you, this will be broadcasted, so they'll also know.
They'll also know.
They'll also know.
No, I mean, I'm offended how many brands so far today.
Which marketing executive you think, actually, from you watching them work, the work that they've done, outside of the organization they work for, you think this is a person that's actually going to add value for other marketers across the world, actually?
I work with a very talented woman from Vodacom called Ayanda Oliphant.
Okay.
And I love the way that she has taken this brand, this Vodacom brand, that means so much to so many people in this country. And she's worked with that brand to create some sort of like national pride in it. Right? And I love the way that she takes insights. I mean, you talk about Kantar delivering insights. I share information with her and she says, okay, but how do we, what does that mean for us? And what does that mean for consumers? And she creates she takes insights and makes it digestible and understandable and relatable.
Yes.
And I think that's the job of every marketer.
Got you.
So
I am the Olifant.
that's the one.
She heard it.
Marketing executive for consumer insights, consumer market insights.
Lovely. My friend, thank you so much for blessing me with your time, your brain, your energy.
Such a pleasure.
I owe you a lot.
Nah.
I don't.
Nah.
It's just a favor.
Yeah, you know I love connecting with people. This is like my jam.
Nah, super. Thank you so much. It's a wrap.